It's an undisputed fact that low-tuned guitars just sound cool. I mean, they just do, right? You can play almost anything in drop F and it's just gonna sound sick. But if you've ever tried recording them, you know that getting it to sound good in a mix is not easy. What might sound awesome when you're just playing in your room by yourself becomes a muddy, sloppy mess in a mix with bass, one or more other guitars, loud punchy drums playing double bass or blast beats, brutal vocals, and maybe some synths, effects, and other finer details. And the reason why it's so hard is because you are literally fighting physics, all the buildup of low end. The standard solution here is to just high pass the out of the guitars, which yes, it will open up the low end, but oftentimes it's to the detriment of what actually sounds cool about low-tuned guitars, which is the low end. So how do you control all that low end to keep the good parts and get rid of the bad? It's not easy, but as someone who's been a part of over 100 Nail the Mixes and had an album recently mixed by Jens Bogren which features tunings as low as E, I honestly think it comes down to 4 things which any of us can do, whether you're recording in a gorgeous studio or a home studio, like me for the most part. This obsession with low tunings isn't new for me. When I released my instrumental album Avalanche of Worms back in 2009, we devised this crazy tuning on a 6-string that was FFC-FAD. Nobody was tuning to F back then, and while it sounded amazing, it was a technical nightmare. We were constantly fighting to stay in tune or to keep it from fretting out. We just did not have the right gear back then, and we didn't even know about baritone guitars. Back then, you had to contend with gear that wasn't designed for this. Pickups that couldn't handle the low end, amps that weren't voiced for it, strings that felt like spaghetti. You had to be super specific about every piece of the chain, otherwise it would sound like total garbage. Now, it's a different world. But the real revolution, the single biggest game changer, has been the Evertune bridge. The lower you go, the more difficult it is to get a truly in-tune recording. And you know, a lot of tuners don't even properly respond to really low notes. Side note, if you want a tuner that handles low tunings really well, check out Lock On by Submission Audio. But that aside, the bigger issue is your playing. When you pick hard, especially on those low, thick strings, the note goes sharp, and this has been a problem with bass recordings since the dawn of time. In the studio, it's common to tune the bass down about 15 cents just to compensate for how sharp the picking makes it. Evertune solves that problem. It's a godsend for playing that low. Now, I know some of you are thinking, what about the Evertune tone tax? Isn't there a sonic price that you pay? And honestly, if you treat the guitar correctly and approach this right, I don't think you hear it. My general rule of thumb is use brand new strings and an Evertune is going to sound great. Plus, you're able to play a lot harder, which also helps you sound great. For low tuning, stability is king, and Evertune is an indispensable tool. Once you have a stable in-tune performance, the next battle is in the mix. The power of these low-tuned guitars is incredible, but they need to be controlled, otherwise they'll overtake everything. This is where you see the difference between a pro and an amateur. It's not just about carving out frequencies with one EQ, it's about layers of control, and no one's better than this than Buster Odeholm. When you listen to a Buster mix, the low-tuned guitars sound huge, but also incredibly clear. That's because he thinks about the sound in layers. It's not just him plugging into an amp sim and adding some EQ and being done. He's using multiband compression to tame specific frequencies, but he's also using different distortions on different frequency bands and blending them all together. He's adding a parallel 808 drive, blended in at 40% just to add mids and bite without changing the core tone. The difference is huge. Let's check it out.
This is a parallel 808 drive, so let's listen to the DI. So like 100%, 0%, and what I used was 40%, so this adds a bit mids. So let's toggle on and off. So off, and with it.
But here's the next level. He uses the pitch shifter on Archetype Gojira to blend in a filtered octave down signal. Let's check it out.
It's only the pitch function and the EQ in the Gojira plugin, and it's set to fatso. The setting is like an octave down basically, and then I filter away all other frequencies except the low end, and then I blend that in. So it's gonna basically make your guitar sound lower tuned than it is. So like 100% it sounds like this. Without the EQ. But when I blend that in, it just gives that deep low end.
He filters out everything except the very low end and blends that in to make the guitar sound lower than it is, making it sound deep without adding mud. It's a game changer. And if you want to learn more about how Buster does things, we just released a course with him called How It's Done with Buster Odeholm. Here's a little more about it.
Let's go banana.
So in this course, I'm gonna write, record, mix, and master an HLB song from scratch and walk you through it every step of the way.
Wow, I'm sweating. That's amazing.
I just wanted to work on music all the time.
Let's go.
So I basically learned everything I had to learn to make the music happen. It definitely sounded like that when I tracked it, right? I get asked about my process non-stop. In this course, I'm gonna be answering all of your questions.
I think we're gonna be here a while.
I'm Buster Odeholm, and this is how it's done.
If you want to check Buster's course out, hit the link in the description. Let's get back to the video. This brings up a really important concept, which is that we have to stop thinking of an 8-string or baritone in a super low tuning as just another guitar. You should treat it like a different instrument. I look at it the same way I look at violin versus a viola versus a cello. They operate in different registers and serve completely different functions in an arrangement. Your approach has to change depending on the function. For example, in a video we made with my friend Spiro de CS, he dialed a tone for a harmonically complex part. For that, he wanted more of a present, complex mid-range, so he used the Neural DSP Omega Granophere, which is more of a British-inspired amp. He even used different tube emulations on the left and right, an EL34 on one side and a 6L6 on the other to create a wider stereo image.
For this main tone, I have the Fortin Cali suite, which I've turned off the amp and the cab section, so I'm only using it here for the boost. That goes into the Omega, which we showed. And then for the cab section, I've turned off the cab section. We're going into the Neural 2C Plus suite, where I've turned off the pedals, the amp. I'm only using the cab section and the EQ. Again, when I got this plugin, I kind of knew immediately that it had some of the most killer V30 IRs to play with. So cool thing about these Neural plugins is you can just kind of in series stack which parts of whichever plugin you like.
But if the guitar's function is to be a low, chugging, rhythmic, textural foundation, that's a totally different job. That's why you see so many simple, heavy breakdown riffs with these tunings. They're written for the tuning strengths. Another key is surgically controlling the dynamics of that low end. My friend Joey Sturgis is a master of this. In this Nail the Mix session, he shows how he uses a multiband compressor just to treat the low frequencies of the guitar.
And your attack and release settings are really going to define, how much bass is being removed. Obviously, you can change the range and the threshold. The range just kind of determines how much movement do you want, Do you want a lot of movement or just a little bit? The threshold is where it starts to react to the signal. So if there's no threshold, no reaction. All threshold, always turning it down. But the attack and release is going to kind of set that play. How fast does it react after the bass is coming through, and how quickly does it return back to normal after the bass is done?
So he explains that the attack and release settings are crucial. By dialing those in by ear, he can control the movement of the low end, making it punchy and tight instead of flabby and overwhelming. It's a core technique for the modern metal sound. So have low-tuned guitars gone too far? Absolutely not. But our job as musicians and producers has gotten bigger. You can't just tune to F, plug in a random amp sim, and expect it to sound good. It's an arms race, but the winning weapons aren't just lower notes, they're knowledge and control. It's understanding that a low-tuned guitar is a different beast and needs to be treated as such. Using tools like the Evertune for stability, building tones and layers like Buster Odeholm, and controlling dynamics with surgical precision like Joey Sturgis. So here's something you can try right away. Next time you're mixing a low-tuned guitar, try Buster's parallel 808 trick. Duplicate your DI track, put a Tube Screamer style plugin on the copy, and blend it in underneath your main tone. You'll be amazed how it brings the mid-range forward and adds a whole new dimension of aggression. And if you want to learn hundreds of other techniques just like this and get the actual session files from bands like Periphery, Gojira, and Lorna Shore to practice on, you have to check out nailthemix.com. It's the fastest way to learn how the pros make modern metal sound massive, heavy, and clear. Thanks for watching. Be sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe. Now go make something heavy.